There is a quiet shift that happens when a man stops chasing attention and starts mastering himself. He speaks less, he reacts less, and suddenly, everything about him changes. The same people who ignored him begin to notice him. The same people who tested him begin to respect him. Not because he demanded it, but because he became someone who no longer needed validation. Stoicism teaches this clearly. Silence is power, focus is control, and discipline is what builds a presence that cannot be ignored. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment your power begins. Most men talk too much. They try to prove their value through words. But value is not proven, it is felt. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of power. In a world where everyone feels the need to speak, explain, and react, silence stands out. Most men believe that they must constantly prove themselves through words. They try to explain their intentions. They try to justify their actions. They try to make others understand them. But in doing so, they slowly give away their power, because the more you explain yourself, the more you appear uncertain. The more you try to convince others of your value, the more it seems like you are seeking validation. And validation-seeking behavior always reduces respect. Stoicism teaches a completely different approach. It teaches that your presence should speak louder than your words. When you are silent, people begin to observe you more closely. They pay attention to your actions. They try to understand you without you saying anything. This creates mystery, and mystery creates attraction. Silence also gives you control over yourself. When you are not constantly speaking, you have time to think. You do not react immediately. You choose your response carefully, and this level of control is rare. Most people are controlled by their emotions. They react instantly. They speak without thinking. But when you remain silent, you separate yourself from this behavior. You become calm while others are reactive. You become composed while others are emotional. And this difference is immediately noticeable. Another important aspect of silence is that it protects your energy. Every unnecessary conversation, every pointless argument, every attempt to explain yourself drains your mental focus. Silence. You conserve that energy. You direct it toward things that actually matter. Your goals, your discipline, your growth. Over time, this creates a powerful shift. You stop seeking attention. You stop needing approval. And when you no longer need validation, people begin to respect you more. Because now your actions are not driven by others. They are driven by your own standards. Silence also makes your words more valuable. When you speak less, people listen more, because they know you do not speak without reason. Your words carry weight. They have impact, and that impact creates influence. In the end, silence is not about saying nothing. It is about saying only what matters. It is about controlling yourself in a world that rewards impulsive behavior. And that control is what builds real power. The moment you react, you lose control. And when you lose control, you lose respect. Most men fail here, not because they are weak, but because they are undisciplined. Emotional control is one of the rarest forms of strength. Most people live in reaction. They respond instantly to what they feel. Anger, frustration, jealousy, insecurity. The moment these emotions appear, they take over. And in that moment, control is lost. This is where respect begins to fade, because when someone can control your emotions, they can control you. Stoicism teaches something very simple, yet extremely powerful. You are not your emotions. You are the one who observes them. When something triggers you, there is always a small space between the event and your reaction. Most people never notice this space. They react immediately. But a disciplined man learns to pause. And in that pause, he regains control. This is where true strength is built. Not in domination, not in loud reactions, but in calm restraint. When someone tries to provoke you, they are testing your control. They want a reaction. They want to see if they can disturb your peace. And if you react emotionally, you give them exactly what they want. But when you remain calm, when you say nothing, when your expression does not change, something powerful happens. You shift the control back to yourself. Now they are the ones who feel uncertain. Now they are the ones who lose balance, because they cannot influence you. Emotional control also creates clarity. When your mind is not overwhelmed by reactions, you begin to see situations for what they truly are. You make better decisions. You avoid unnecessary conflict. And most importantly, you protect your energy. Every emotional reaction costs you something: your focus, your peace, your stability. But when you remain calm, you conserve all of it. Over time, this becomes your identity. People begin to notice that you do not react like others. You do not get easily triggered. You do not lose control in difficult moments. And this creates a quiet form of respect, because emotional stability is rare. Anyone can react, but very few can remain still when everything around them is pushing for a reaction. This is the difference between weakness and discipline, between impulse and control, between noise and power. In the end, controlling your emotions is not about suppressing them. It is about mastering them, feeling everything, but choosing what to express. And that choice is where your true strength lies. Attention is your most valuable asset. Where you place it defines your life. Most men give it away too easily, and that is where they lose power. Attention is a form of currency, and like any valuable currency, it should be spent with intention. But most men never learn this. They give their attention freely, to people who haven't earned it, to situations that don't deserve it, to distractions that slowly drain their focus. And without realizing it, they weaken their own position. Because attention is not just about what you see, it is about what you feed with your energy. Whatever you focus on grows. If you constantly focus on others, their opinions, their actions, their approval, then your life becomes centered around them. You lose your direction. You lose your purpose. Stoicism teaches a different discipline. It teaches you to reclaim your attention, to bring it back to what truly matters: your actions, your growth, your standards. When you stop giving attention freely, something shifts. You become less reactive. You stop checking for validation. You stop seeking approval. And this creates a sense of independence. People begin to notice that you are not easily available, not because you are trying to appear distant, but because you are focused. Focus is rare. Most people are distracted all the time. They move from one thing to another without purpose. But when you hold your attention steady, you separate yourself from that pattern. You become intentional. You become controlled. Another important shift happens when you withdraw attention. You stop reacting to everything. You stop engaging in unnecessary conversations. It matters. And this silence, this distance, creates power. Because now your attention is selective, and selective attention signals value. It shows that not everything deserves your time. Not everyone deserves your focus. Over time, this builds a strong presence. People begin to feel it. They notice that you are not easily influenced. You are not chasing anything. You are simply moving forward on your own path. And that creates a natural form of respect. Because attention is easy to give, but difficult to control. And those who control it, control their direction. In the end, your attention shapes your life. If you give it away carelessly, you lose yourself. But if you hold it with discipline, you build something powerful. The moment you need approval, you give away your authority. Most men don't notice this. But everything changes when you stop needing to be accepted. There is a quiet habit that weakens many men without them realizing it. The need to be approved. The need to be liked. The need to be accepted. It does not always appear obvious. Sometimes it shows up in small ways. Adjusting your behavior to please others. Changing your opinions to avoid disagreement. Explaining yourself just to be understood. Over time, this creates a pattern. You begin to shape yourself based on how others respond. And slowly, you lose your original identity. Stoicism teaches the opposite. It teaches that your value does not come from outside. It comes from how you carry yourself, your standards, your discipline, your ability to remain grounded regardless of opinions. When you seek validation, you place your worth in the hands of others. And when others control your worth, they control your behavior. This creates instability, because opinions change, people change, approval is never consistent. But when your sense of value comes from within, nothing external can shake it easily. This is where real confidence begins, not in loud expression, not in trying to impress, but in quiet certainty. A man who does not seek validation moves differently. He does not chase attention. He does not adjust himself to fit every situation. He simply acts according to his principles. This creates clarity. People may not always agree with him, but they understand him, because his behavior is consistent, and consistency builds trust. Another powerful shift happens when you stop seeking approval. By rejection, because rejection no longer defines you. It becomes just another event, not a reflection of your worth. This frees you. It removes pressure. It allows you to act without fear. And when fear disappears, your actions become stronger, more direct, more controlled. Over time, people begin to notice this difference. You are not trying to impress them. You are not seeking their approval. And because of that, your presence feels more solid, more grounded, more real. This is what creates respect. Not trying to be liked, but being comfortable with not needing to be. In the end, validation is temporary. It comes and goes. But self-respect, once built through discipline and awareness. Not everything needs a response, and not everyone deserves an explanation. There's a quiet habit that slowly reduces a man's presence. The constant need to explain himself. Explaining your actions, explaining your decisions, explaining your intentions. It may seem harmless. It may even feel necessary at times, but when it becomes a pattern, it begins to weaken your position. Because the more you explain, the more it appears that you are seeking permission. And when you seek permission, you lose authority. Stoic thinking approaches this differently. It focuses on clarity of action rather than clarity of explanation. If your actions are aligned with your values, they do not need constant justification. They speak for themselves. Many people explain themselves because they want to avoid conflict. They want to be understood. They want others to agree with them. But the truth is, not everyone will understand you, and not everyone needs to. When you accept this, a certain weight disappears. You stop trying to control how others perceive you. You stop adjusting your words to fit their expectations, and you begin to act with more certainty. This does not mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming precise. You speak when it is necessary. You remain silent when it is not. And this balance creates strength. Another problem with over-explaining is that it invites unnecessary judgment. The more details you provide, the more opportunities others have to question, criticize, or misunderstand. But when your communication is simple and controlled, you limit that space. You become harder to challenge, not because you are defensive, but because you are clear. There is also a deeper shift that happens when you stop explaining yourself. You begin to trust your own decisions. Longer need external confirmation to feel confident. You act because it aligns with your standards, not because others approve of it. This creates independence. And independence creates presence. People begin to sense that you are not easily influenced. You are not seeking agreement. You are not adjusting yourself to fit every opinion. You are simply moving with direction, and that kind of movement is difficult to ignore. Over time, this habit reshapes how others interact with you. They stop expecting long explanations. They stop questioning every decision. Because your consistency builds quiet authority. Not everything needs to be said. Not everything needs to be justified. Sometimes the strongest position is simply knowing your path and continuing forward without needing to explain it. The more you chase, the less you are valued. The moment you stop chasing, everything shifts. Chasing is one of the fastest ways to lose respect. It doesn't matter how confident you think you appear. When you are constantly pursuing someone's attention, approval, or presence, it creates imbalance. And people can feel that imbalance immediately. When you chase, you are signaling that the other person has higher value than you. You are placing them in a position of importance, while lowering your own. This is not about relationships only. It applies to attention, validation, conversations, and even opportunities. The more desperate the pursuit, the less attractive it becomes. Stoic discipline teaches a different approach. Not avoidance, but replacement. Instead of chasing what is uncertain, you build something within your control. Your routine, your standards, your direction. When your life is structured and focused, you no longer feel the need to chase, because your time becomes valuable, your attention becomes limited, and naturally, your behavior changes. You stop over-investing in people who are inconsistent. You stop trying to win attention. You stop proving your worth. Instead, you observe, you evaluate, and you decide where your energy goes. This creates balance, because now you are not reacting to others, you are operating from your own structure. One of the biggest shifts happens internally. When you stop chasing, you remove emotional dependency. You are no longer waiting for responses. You are no longer affected by delays or silence. Your mood is not controlled by someone else's behavior. That alone builds strength, because now your stability comes from within. People begin to notice this change. You are not constantly initiating. You are not seeking attention. And because of that, your presence feels different, more controlled, more selective, more valuable. Another important factor is self-respect. Chasing often comes from fear. Fear of losing someone, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough. But when you build your life properly, those fears begin to fade. Because you are no longer dependent on external outcomes. You become complete within your own structure. And when that happens, you don't chase, you attract. Not because you are trying to impress, but because your behavior reflects stability. Chasing creates pressure, and pressure pushes people away. But calm, controlled presence draws people in naturally. So instead of chasing what moves away from you, build something that makes others come closer on their own. Not everything deserves your full energy, especially at the beginning. One of the most common mistakes is not what men do, but when they do it. They invest too much, too early. Too much attention, too much effort, too much availability. And this creates a problem that is often invisible at first, because early overinvestment feels like interest. But it actually signals imbalance. When you give too much too soon, you remove the natural process of discovery. There is no space left for curiosity to grow. No time for value to be observed. Everything is presented at once, and when everything is given quickly, it is rarely appreciated deeply. Stoic thinking emphasizes timing and restraint, not holding back out of fear, but pacing your energy with awareness. Every interaction has a natural rhythm. When that rhythm is ignored, things feel forced. When you're always available, your presence becomes predictable. When you give constant attention, it loses its impact. When you invest heavily without observing first, you remove the need for the other person to invest at all. It allows decisions to be made with clarity rather than emotion. There is also a deeper layer to this. When you invest too early, you often become attached to an outcome rather than reality, and attachment creates pressure. You begin to expect responses, you begin to look for signals, you begin to overanalyze behavior, and all of this reduces your stability. But when your investment is controlled, your mindset remains steady. You are not rushing, you are not forcing, you are allowing things to unfold naturally. This creates a different kind of presence, one that is calm, measured, and intentional. People can sense when someone is grounded in their approach. There is no pressure, no urgency, no need to rush outcomes, and that creates comfort, not tension. Value is not just about what you offer, it is about how and when you offer it. Timing matters, restraint matters, and controlled investment is what keeps everything balanced. The moment you become attached, you become vulnerable. Not because attachment is wrong, but because uncontrolled attachment removes your clarity. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many people confuse it with coldness, with distance, with a lack of care. But true detachment is none of these things. It is not about feeling less. It is about being in control of what you feel. There is a difference. Most men struggle here because they attach too quickly, not just to people, but to outcomes. They attach to expectations, to how things should go, to how someone should respond, to how situations should unfold. And the moment reality does not match those expectations, frustration begins, confusion follows, and control is lost. Stoicism approaches life from a different angle. It teaches you to engage fully, but remain unattached to the result. This creates a powerful internal shift. You still act, you still care, you still invest effort, but your emotional stability is no longer dependent on outcomes. This is where clarity begins. When you are not attached, you see things as they are, not as you want them to be. You notice behavior without distortion. You recognize inconsistency without denying it. You understand reality without trying to reshape it. And this awareness gives you an advantage. Because most people operate under emotional influence. They ignore red flags. They justify behavior. They hold on to situations longer than they should. Not because they don't see the truth, but because they are attached to a version of it. Illusion. It allows you to step back mentally, to observe instead of react, to evaluate instead of assume. This does not make you distant, it makes you precise. Another important aspect of detachment is emotional independence. When you are attached, your mood begins to depend on external factors. A message, a response, a reaction. Something small can shift your entire state. But when you are detached, your emotional state becomes stable. You are not easily influenced. You are not constantly reacting to changes. You remain grounded regardless of what happens. This stability creates strength, because now your control comes from within, not from circumstances, not from people, but from your own awareness. Detachment also improves decision-making. When emotions are not overwhelming your judgment, you make clearer choices. You are not driven by urgency. You are not influenced by temporary feelings. You act based on understanding, not impulse. This reduces mistakes. It prevents unnecessary involvement. It protects your time and energy. There is also a silent confidence that comes with detachment. You are not afraid of losing something, because you are not clinging to it. You are not trying to control outcomes, because you understand they are not fully in your control. And this acceptance removes pressure. You become calm, composed, unaffected. People can sense this immediately, because most individuals are driven by need for attention, need for reassurance, need for control. But when you remove that need, your presence changes. You are no longer trying to hold on to anything, and because of that, you appear more stable, more in control. Detachment also protects you from emotional exhaustion. When you are attached to everything, everything affects you. Every change feels intense. Every situation feels personal. And over time, this becomes draining. But when you are detached, you create distance between yourself and unnecessary stress. You engage only where it matters. You step back where it doesn't. This creates balance. It allows you to maintain energy for what is truly important. Finally, detachment is not about avoiding connection. It is about maintaining control within connection. You can care deeply without losing yourself. You can engage fully without becoming dependent. You can invest effort without expecting outcomes. That is the difference. And that difference is what creates strength. In the end, detachment is not a barrier. It is a foundation. It keeps you stable in unstable situations. It keeps you clear when emotions try to cloud your judgment. And most importantly, it keeps you in control of yourself. In the end, it is not about what you say. It is not about what you show. It is about what cannot be moved. At some point, everything comes down to one thing: stability. Not temporary confidence, not moments of discipline, but a consistent, unshakable state of being. Most men build themselves on unstable foundations. They rely on external factors to feel strong. Attention, validation, results, control over situations. And as long as those things are present, they feel grounded. But the moment something shifts, a change in behavior, a loss of attention, an unexpected outcome, everything begins to collapse, because what they built was never stable to begin with. Stoicism is different. It does not focus on controlling the outside world. It focuses on mastering the internal one. Thoughts, reactions, decisions, discipline. When these are controlled, everything else becomes secondary. Being unshakable means you are not easily influenced, not by opinions, not by pressure, not by temporary emotions. You are steady, you are consistent, you are grounded in your own structure. This does not happen suddenly. It is built over time, through repeated choices, through discipline in moments where it is easier to react, through silence when it is easier to speak. through walking away when it is easier to engage. Every time you choose control over impulse, you strengthen this foundation. And slowly, something changes. You stop reacting the way you used to. Situations that once disturbed you no longer have the same effect. Words that once triggered you lose their impact. Outcomes that once defined your mood become irrelevant. This is what it means to become unshakable. Not emotionless, but unaffected. A key part of this is self-trust. When you trust your own judgment, you do not look for constant reassurance. When you trust your own direction, you do not get distracted by every opinion. When you trust your own discipline, you do not fear temporary setbacks. This level of trust creates independence, and independence creates power. Because now your state is not dependent on anything external. You carry your stability with you. Another important aspect is consistency. Being unshakable is not about one strong moment. It is about repeated behavior over time. Anyone can appear strong for a short period, but maintaining that strength day after day is what creates real presence. People begin to recognize this, not through what you say, but through what you consistently do. You become predictable in the best way, calm under pressure, controlled in difficult situations, focused when distractions appear. This predictability builds trust, and trust builds respect. There is also a quiet confidence in being unshakable. You are not trying to prove anything. You are not reacting to everything. You are simply stable. And that stability speaks louder than any display of dominance ever could. In a world full of reactions, calmness stands out. In a world full of noise, silence stands out. In a world full of instability, discipline stands out. This is what separates you. Not effort alone, but control. But consistency. Not words, but presence. In the end, being unshakable is not about others at all. It is about you, your standards, your discipline, your ability to remain grounded regardless of what happens around you. Because when you reach that point, nothing external has the power to move you.